Hello! I just wanted to start by saying thanks for taking time out of your day to listen to my webinar. Today I'm going to be talking to you about how to find, get, and do well in a college internship. I'm super excited to be doing this because as a recent college graduate myself, a lot of what will be included here are tips from my own personal experiences while I was on the job hunt just this summer before I was hired by Always Up. I hope that you find my presentation to be helpful and relevant because I remember how difficult it felt to find an internship during college. It isn't as hard as we build it up to be though, and finding an internship is a really great and effective pathway to employment post-college graduation. I'll also be sending you a list of resources through email Monday for you to look over, and you can always contact me at eforest@alwaysup.org if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. All right, so to start, internships aren't an actual requirement for most colleges, but internships are an unwritten requirement to being able to get a good job quickly once you graduate. An internship is a great way for you to get your foot in the door for companies you'd like to work for more permanently, especially because according to Forbes, 60% of students with paid internships actually do end up with a job offer. Getting in with a company you admire early is a great way to figure out what you're doing post-graduation, but it's even possible you'll get paid more at a starting salary since you'll be a much more competitive candidate. If you aren't paid, though, you'll still earn college credit for your internship, and it will look great on a resume, as well as giving you skills you need to get future jobs. An internship will also give you great insight into whether your chosen career path is the one for you. Even if that specific job that you try out isn't for you, the internship can give you valuable insight into whether there are other related jobs in your field that you'd like to pursue instead of what you studied specifically. And it's definitely better to know before graduation whether you're uninterested in your field of study. So an internship can save you from that before you join the working world and changing course becomes more difficult. And then maybe most importantly, an internship also gives you great skills and confidence within the working world. Experience in your field is more helpful than learning theories in college classes, so the more of the basic skills you learn at an internship are transferable, in case you don't want to stick to the field that you intern in. And for almost all jobs, employers look at experience over your major, so an internship is essential to the modern working world. It's actually recommended that you do multiple internships in school to remain competitive since most students will graduate with an internship under their belt. So don't get left behind and get an internship. But now you might be asking, so where do I begin? And that's a tough question for a college student, especially when you have so much going on. But the first step to getting an internship is to have a solid resume and cover letter. So if you've never written a resume before, it's basically just a quick overview of your education, qualifications, and experience within the field that you're applying for. Not all resumes look the same stylistically and content-wise, but all resumes do have the same basic format, and there's a set of do's and don'ts. One of the first rules of thumb is that, as a college student, your resume should never be more than a page long. You should keep your font simple and legible, and make sure that you choose one that's sans serifs. Serifs are just the extra little decorative flourished line that's attached at the end of some letters. An example of a font that has serifs is this slide's heading, which is Cambria. And then an example of a font that's sans serifs is this slide's body, which is Calibri. So just keep the font simple enough to read and choose Calibri over Cambria. Also, keep in mind that you want to keep your font big enough to read, so don't go below an 11-point font. You also don't want to make your font huge to look as though you're trying to waste space on your resume, so try to keep it around a 12-point font. The exception to this rule is your name, which you should actually make a bit bigger than the rest of your resume so that it stands out. Format-wise, another thing to consider is that you don't want your resume to look too cramped. Make sure that you leave at least a little bit of space between sections and subheadings so that it makes it easier for the hiring manager to scan across your document. Because you only have one page and resume words and space are so important, make sure that you tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. Only list relevant jobs within the industry that you're applying for or jobs that have transferable, relatable skills. However, if you don't have much experience, then you might not be able to get rid of the irrelevant work experience, and you might just want to list everything that you've done in the past few years. In this case, try to match your description of what you did to desirable transferable skills like communication or independent work skills. So there are many different resume formats, and this is just an example of a basic resume. At the top, you have your name along with your address and contact information. Nowadays, because of identity theft, it's preferred that the applicant only list their city, state, and zip code for the address. Also, depending on the job, your contact information could just be your email and telephone number. But if you're applying for a media type of job or something that's more internet-based, including your LinkedIn or even your Twitter could be a plus. Check the industry standard beforehand so that you fit with the norm. The next section is the objective, but that's actually not necessary in most resumes. Most people like to do away with the objective because it's a given since you're applying for a job. But if you'd like to include it, the objective is just basically stating what you're applying for. It's also a way to take up space if you have a resume that's a little bit bare and you're looking to fill some space. This resume example lists education next, but many resumes choose to include your education after your professional experience. Just to give a few tips, in your education section, you shouldn't list your GPA unless it's above a 3.0. List your expected graduation date, and it's also appropriate to add on awards such as dean lists, like in this example. Next on the resume is professional experience, though it can also be shortened to just experience, or in the case of this resume, work experience. This is where you list the jobs that you've held and the types of tasks you completed during the job. This is a space where actions speak loudly. Listing your job duties through bullet points rather than paragraphs makes it easier for a hiring manager to scan through, and it cuts extra words because you don't need to write full sentences. When listing your job tasks, it's a good idea to try to include as many words from the original job listing in your resume as possible. Many companies use tracking systems to actually disqualify resumes in a database that look as though they might not fit the role. One of the ways to get around that and to get a real human to look at your resume is by matching words on the job listing because it will match. So pay attention to those. Another great addition for a resume in today's day and age is significant volunteer experience. Your employer will want to see that you have a cause and that you care about and that you have values that align with their company's values. Having a good amount of volunteer experience can be just as valuable as paid experience in the case of some jobs. But something that this resume is lacking is a skill section. Basically, a skill section would just be another subheader, and that would be where the applicant would list relevant skills that would be useful for the job. Common skills to include are computer or software skills that go beyond Microsoft Office, languages spoken, communication skills, and whether you have a good attention to detail. It's important to make sure that the skills you list are applicable and that they're actually things that you know at least a little bit about too, since you'll be asked to use those skills when you're hired. It's also recommended that you specify whether you're proficient or advanced with your skill set so that hiring managers know whether you'll need more training or whether you're already ready to go. Old resume advice might say to include references available upon request, but that's no longer necessary and will just waste space on your resume. Do have your references available because they will ask, though. Okay, so there's also another more often forgotten element to beginning an internship hunt, and that's the cover letter. Cover letters are where you go into a bit more detail about what you've done work-wise and the specific reasons that you're interested in working for the company you're applying for. At its basics, your first paragraph will state which position you're applying for and how you found the listing. Your middle paragraph should explain what you admire about the company, what made you decide to apply, and what you have to offer the company. You can also use bullet point format to list your qualifications rather than a large block of text in order to save space. And then your last paragraph should thank the employer and include your follow-up information. Hiring managers are very busy, so you have to keep this letter as short as possible. It absolutely must be under a page in length, but it's also advised to keep it even shorter at half a page. Because it's such a short letter, you can't waste any words, and you must stay as concise as possible. A few tips for keeping down length is to use active voice rather than passive, to use action verbs so that you can cut out adjectives and adverbs, and to cut out all phrases that don't add depth to what you're trying to convey. Basically, just stick to the basics of what you need to say, but you also don't want your cover letter to just be a carbon copy of your resume. To go along with that, always know who to address a cover letter to and do your research about the company ahead of time. We'll go into this a bit more in a later slide, but it's important to know who you're talking to and a bit about the company's values before applying. Cover letters are also always sent as a PDF rather than a Word document because PDFs are more compatible with most computers. And as with all writing, make sure that your spelling and grammar are in great shape. Ask someone to read over it before you send it out so they can give you some insight and catch any typos that you might have missed. and also make sure that you have a strong intro and conclusion, since that's the first and last impression that the hiring manager will have of you. Okay, so now that you know the basics of a resume and a cover letter, where do you find these internships and where do you go? Luckily for you, college is the best place to be while on the search for an internship. Your school should have a career services center, so that's the very first place to look. Career services offers more than just help with your internship search. Most also offer career counseling, help with selecting your major. They can inform you about career events and workshops. They can help you with getting an on-campus job and coach you through interview techniques, help you with networking resumes and cover letters, even teach you how to find a fake job listing and how to dress for success. So the Career Service Center is the best place to start as an undergrad for help with finding internships. Most also have a website component, so you can even access some of their services from your own couch at home if you can't make it on campus that day. Even more helpful than going to career services is talking to one of your school counselors, especially a counselor for your specific major. Counselors are the experts within the field that you're studying for when it comes to post-grad life and then future career opportunities. Some schools even offer specific internship counselors for a major, so those would be the best people to go to, especially for local internships. Each school is different, so it's in your best interest to look early and to figure out who's there to best help you. Something to keep in mind is that if you find a paid internship, then you can just apply and you aren't actually required to speak with a counselor ahead of time. But if you're interested in an unpaid internship, I would always talk to a college counselor beforehand. The reason for that is that if you're doing an unpaid internship, you must be getting college credit for it. Otherwise, it might be illegal to accept. Check to make sure that you're eligible to be placed in your college's internship program beforehand so you don't apply for an internship that you can't take. It sounds counterintuitive that an internship counselor would prevent a student from taking an internship, but I actually wasn't allowed to take an internship in college because I didn't have one of the prerequisites. My counselor wouldn't let me take it concurrently with the internship class, so applying for an internship that you can't accept can lead to strained ties between you and the internship site, and then you might not be able to defer the internship if they do offer it to you. So just be cautious and plan ahead when it comes to unpaid internships. So beyond counselors, your teachers are also really great assets. Some teachers have actual fieldwork experience, so it's always great to have close relationships with them. It could even lead you to a job opening in the future. My advice is to go to office hours and participate in class so that they remember your name and face. This also will lead to better grades, and they'd be more likely to write you a letter of recommendation in the future too, so it's a win-win. Social media and LinkedIn are two other great resources in today's technology age. If you follow companies that you're interested in working for on LinkedIn or on other social media channels, you can get the first heads up for when they're looking for new applications or for applicants and for when they're opening internship positions. You can also connect directly, which could help you to get an interview. We'll go into that a bit more in the next slide, but it's always a great idea to monitor a company before. Oh, I see that we have a question. How do we get internships if we have a low GPA? That's a tough question. Well, experience and volunteer experience, that's a great way to make yourself more competitive. Being in extracurriculars and just showing that you're doing stuff other than just going to school, I think that's a really great way too. But just having other activities, I think that's probably the best way to get an internship. Okay. Yeah, and totally if you have any more questions, continue to ask because I can see now that you're here. Okay, so I will continue now. Another great internship tool is to attend on-campus career fairs. And then one of the easiest ways to hear about these events is from your Career Services Center. On-campus career fairs are great because the employers are there to talk to college students specifically. When you attend, carry a few resumes and dress nicely so that you can make a good first impression and wow anyone that you meet that you might be interested in working for. You can even ask whoever is sponsoring the event for a list of participants so that you can research them beforehand and figure out who you'd like to speak with. Take any business cards that you can and then follow up afterwards with anyone that you connected with or that you want to ask more questions to. Sometimes schools can also host on-campus networking events with alumni and then possible employers. These can be intimidating because the point is just to schmooze, but don't let fear or shyness hold you back. Personal connections are one of the most effective ways to get an internship, so these are really valuable events to attend. If you're nervous, come early so that there are less people and you can target individuals more easily. You can even bring a friend in your major with you, but make sure that you don't just stand next to them for the entire event and that you reach out to others, since that's the point of networking events. Bringing a friend can be productive, though, because then you can make twice as many connections and your friend can introduce you to someone that they think that you'd be great to work with. It's also a good idea to have a few icebreakers in mind and to be prepared for the types of questions that are likely to come up. So do a little bit of practice beforehand so that you're not caught off guard. And then lastly, the internet is full of a lot of amazing resources. Take advantage of LinkedIn to make connections to people you meet at your career fairs. Use Glassdoor to evaluate any prospective companies beforehand and then to weed out any that you don't want to apply to. Google is always there for you. And then internship websites are dedicated to helping you find an internship, even though looking for local internships through people that you actually know is a lot easier and a lot more effective. Idealist is a website for connecting internships as well as volunteer work in the nonprofit sector. And CoolWorks is a website that lists fun summer internships. So if you ever just have an extra hour, exploring the internet for all that it offers in terms of internships can be an hour well spent. Okay. Okay, so now if you've done your research and you found the internship that you want, you might be confused about how to actually get an initial interview. So the first step is to apply, of course, but nowadays many companies, especially bigger ones, ask students to apply through a database. Because of this, simply sending your application into the void is nowhere near enough. You already know to match the words from the listing to your resume so that you don't get thrown out by the tracking system, but these companies can get such a high influx of applications that even when you do this, it's still not guaranteed that your application will ever reach a human's eyes. If the application has a person of contact listed, then that's great. Make sure that you send them a follow-up email that includes your information and asks them about the next steps. That will set you apart from the other applicants that only sent in their resume and hoped for the best. Most of the time, though, finding a specific person to email will be a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to do some research. Calling the company directly to ask who to speak with or checking the website for staff contact info is a great step. LinkedIn is also a great resource to figure out who will be doing the hiring, and it allows you to compile all of their information so that you can correctly title and address your follow-up email. But no matter how you get the person's information, the next step is to email the hiring manager directly. Don't message them through LinkedIn because email is actually way more efficient. Employees can spend over 6 hours on their email daily, so what you want to do is to get into their inbox. But in order to be noticed, you need to message them correctly. So the first step to getting noticed is the subject line. You want to create a subject that's short and to the point, but also that makes the recipient curious enough to open. Then in your actual email, you want to appear warm and friendly. It's important to have good spelling and grammar, but make sure that you use words that most people use in their daily lives as well as your higher vocabulary to avoid sounding like a human dictionary in your message. Make sure that you keep the email short because the hiring manager doesn't have time to read through an entire cover letter. Begin your message with how you found the position and why you would fit the job specifically. Sell your strengths so that you stand out from the crowd, but only so much so that the recipient is intrigued. Let them know that you're available to chat and then follow up with them if you don't hear back within the next week. But during the follow-up, make sure that you don't come across as demanding. Ask them if they've had a chance to look over your email and if they need any additional information from you. Most of the time, 2 follow-up emails is the limit before you begin to go from taking initiative to bothersome. But don't be discouraged if you don't hear back. They're probably just busy and it wasn't a reflection on you or your qualifications personally, probably. Another tip is to keep a log of the people that you contact so you don't accidentally forget to follow up with someone and so that you don't apply to the same job twice. And then during your follow-up message, if they do ask for an interview, try to set it up sometime in the morning. Okay, so now you've set up a meeting time with the hiring manager, but how do you get hired? The first step is preparation. Preparation is what will make you the most confident you can be during the interview, and also what sets you apart from other applicants that didn't do their research. At the very least, know your company's core missions, values, and the worksite culture. This is often featured on their website or on their social media pages, so make sure you follow the company and spend some time cyber-stalking them beforehand. You can also take note of any exciting developments within the company that you can highlight during your interview. You could even set up Google Alerts so that you don't miss a thing and you're informed even during the final few minutes before the interview. It's also a good idea to know the names of the higher-ups and what they've done for the company, as well as which skills and experience the company is looking for with the position that you're interviewing. You can even check out your interviewer on LinkedIn or Twitter so that you can find a point of similarity and connect to them on a more personal level, which will give you an advantage during the interview. But I would also do a social media sweep of your own in case the hiring manager is doing the same thing to you. No cursing, no extreme negativity, and no pictures of you with alcohol or other illegal substances on any of your public pages. As for tips during the actual interview, there are so many online resources that there's no excuse not to take a look at some beforehand. However, I'll still give you a few basics of what to do and what not to do. So the night before, practice with a friend so that you feel more prepared, and then the day of, arrive early to the interview, and then the night before also set aside any important papers so that you don't forget them. Turn off your cell phone before you enter the office and dress professionally. Smile at everyone in the office and offer a firm handshake to your interviewer when you meet them. Make eye contact and give honest answers during your talk. Don't chew gum and don't mumble when you speak. Have a good posture and appear confident. Don't let the interviewer go over time, and let your potential employer know how excited you are to be considered. At the end, ask about their hiring timeline and whether you will need to come in for another interview. Also keep in mind that you're going to be asked difficult questions, so you need to prepare for them ahead of time. Know how you're going to answer and then practice your answers the night before so you don't stumble. The first question that you are likely to be answered is to tell the interviewer a little bit about yourself. This is a pivotal question and will set the tone for the rest of your interview. They're not just asking for your autobiography, and that wouldn't be a great answer anyway, but they also don't just want to hear about what you've done professionally. Include a mix of how you became interested in the work you're applying for personally, what you've done professionally to prepare for the job, and why you're excited about the opportunity. The next question they may ask is what you know about the company. When they ask that, don't just regurgitate the website, but do make it clear that you've done your research. Apply it to your own life to show why your goals align with the company's goals. One of the next dreaded questions is highlighting your greatest strength and weakness. For your strength, be honest and give an example of how you have used this trait to your advantage professionally. The weakness question is a little bit trickier, but don't gloss over it. Don't make yourself look like a bad candidate, but don't say that you have no flaws either. List a true weakness that you struggle with, but make sure that you highlight an example of how you're working to overcome it and that you don't let it hinder your work. You'll also probably be asked about where you see yourself in 5 years. Make sure to use this time to show how the position aligns with your goals, or if you're not quite sure what the future holds, how this job will play an important role in your journey and in helping you make a decision about your future. Don't forget that you also need to ask questions at the end of your interview. Not asking questions makes you seem uninterested and as though you're not truly invested in the company. Ask about growth opportunities or anything that the interviewer mentioned about the job that you're unclear about. Show that you're interested in the company specifically and that you want to know more. And then after the interview, within a day, don't forget to email a personalized thank you note that references a specific conversation from the interview. Don't let them forget your name and who you are so you can keep that connection. There may also be a few follow-up interviews before you're hired, so make sure that you establish you're available to talk more in your follow-up thank you. Okay, so if you get the job, what now? First of all, yay, but now it's time to impress your bosses. Before your first day on the job, brush up on your company knowledge so that you feel even more prepared. Make sure that you dress nicely because it's always better to be overdressed on your first day than underdressed. And then on the first day, pay close attention to what others are wearing and then try to emulate that level of professionalism. And even though it's just an internship, treat it as though it's a real job. You're still going to be doing important work that will help you and your company in the future, and that you still want to make a great impression. Do your best, and part of doing your best is getting to know your colleagues. Build as many relationships as you can and make a great first impression on everyone in the office, even if there are other interns at your level that can't do anything immediately to help you out. When you're assigned projects, take initiative, but don't overstep your boundaries. Know it's expected of you, and don't try to take over anyone else's duties unless they asked you specifically to step in. To add to this, always offer a helping hand if you can. Willingness to help and learn are two really great traits for an intern to have. And along with that, don't be afraid to ask questions about anything you don't understand and to get feedback on your work. Employers want to know that you care about what you're doing and that you're thinking critically about what you're doing. Keep track of your projects so that you can put them on your resume in the future, and so that you can explain to all of your coworkers and bosses exactly what you've been up to if asked. And do not text in the office, and keep your phone put away unless you access your work through your phone. Above all, remember that internships often lead to future employment. An internship helps you develop into a professional, so even if you don't get hired at this company specifically, your boss or colleagues can be great references for future employment or for future letters of recommendation. Take in all that you can as an intern and meet the right people, and then you're on the road to employment already. So I hope that you found this webinar to be helpful and informative. I hope you feel a little bit less lost when it comes to internships, and that you've started to envision a roadmap to what you're going to do to get one. And then if you have any further questions or concerns, you can always email me at eforest@alwaysup.org. In addition, I'll be sending out a list of resources on Monday that I use to help kind of put this all together, and that will include links that you might find helpful and read through, as well as this PowerPoint. So thanks for attending. I'm unmuting everyone. Oh, or maybe I did mute you. So if there's no more questions, then I guess this is the end. And thank you so much for attending. And feel free to email me if you have any questions. Thank you.